The days after I met Noah were a blur of guilt and longing. I tried to push it all down, back into the neat, tidy box I had built for myself, but the pull toward him lingered like a shadow, always present. Every time I saw Jessica, every time I looked at Emma, I felt the weight of the lie that had started to take root. I went through the motions. At work, I was the same reliable guy. At home, I was the loving husband and father, doing everything expected of me. But inside, something was shifting, and it scared the hell out of me. I hadn't been honest with myself about who I was for a long time, and meeting Noah had cracked something wide open. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was a one-time thing. I was just being foolish. But then, 2 days later, I got a text from him. "Can we talk?" It was simple. Just a few words. But it was enough to send a jolt of panic through me. My fingers hovered over my phone, and I debated whether to respond. I could ignore it. I could pretend it didn't happen. But I couldn't. I typed back, my thumb trembling. "Sure." The next day, I found myself meeting Noah at a coffee shop a few blocks from my office. When I walked in, I spotted him right away. He was sitting by the window looking out at the street. He hadn't seen me yet, so I took a moment to just watch him. There was something about the way he carried himself, quiet, but with an intensity that made everything else seem insignificant. I approached his table and cleared my throat. He turned, and for a second, I saw the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Matt," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "Thanks for coming." I sat down across from him, the silence between us stretching before he finally spoke. "I've been thinking about that night," Noah said, his voice low. "About you. About what happened." I swallowed, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, looking at me with those dark eyes that seemed to see right through me. "I think we both know what happened. It wasn't just a coincidence. You didn't just give me a ride because you felt sorry for me. There's something between us, Matt." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words stuck in my throat. Because he was right. There was something I couldn't ignore. "I don't know what it is," I said quietly, "but I can't stop thinking about you either." Noah leaned forward, his gaze never leaving mine. "Then maybe we should talk about it." It was difficult to pinpoint exactly when I began to feel that my connection with Noah was something more than just curiosity. The first few times we met were filled with guarded conversations, small talk that barely scratched the surface of what I knew we both felt, but now it was impossible to deny. Each encounter with Noah only deepened the pull I felt toward him, a force that was both intoxicating and terrifying. It started slowly, but over time, it became something I couldn't ignore. Noah had a way of making me feel alive in a way that I hadn't in years. His eyes, dark, searching, seemed to see straight through me. He didn't just hear the words I spoke, he felt the weight of them. Our conversations became more personal, more vulnerable. I shared things with him that I hadn't shared with anyone, things I didn't even know I was hiding. We met in that quiet cafe, far from the prying eyes of the world, and it was there that we allowed ourselves to say the things that had been building between us for days. Noah was more than just an attractive man to me. He was a mirror of my own unspoken desires, a reflection of the parts of myself I had buried deep beneath the surface. "I've never felt this way before," I admitted to him, my voice rough, eyes avoiding his for a moment. "I don't know what to do with it." Noah's gaze softened as he looked at me, the storm clouds in his eyes shifting just a little. "I don't know either," he said quietly. "But I can't stop thinking about you, Matt. I can't stop wanting to know more about you. To be with you. To feel everything." His words hung in the air, weightless yet heavy at the same time. I swallowed, trying to grasp at some semblance of control, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. The more I tried to push this feeling away, the more it slipped through my fingers, leaving me wanting more. "I don't know if I can do this," I confessed. My chest ached with the reality of it. "I have a life, a family. What we're doing, it doesn't make sense. It's all wrong." Noah leaned forward, his hand reaching across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The contact was electric, sending a shiver through my body that made it impossible to focus on anything else. His touch was soft, but there was an undeniable strength behind it, as though he was telling me without words that he wasn't going anywhere. "I know it's wrong," he whispered, the admission heavy in the air. "But it feels right, doesn't it? I'm not asking you to give up your life, Matt. But I think we both know we can't ignore this. We can't ignore how we feel. Not anymore." His words were a promise and a challenge all at once. I wanted to argue, to say that this was dangerous, that I had too much to lose. But a part of me, the part that had been hidden away for so long, wanted to reach across the table and pull him to me, to kiss him like I had wanted to since the first moment we met. The pull was magnetic and I couldn't deny it any longer. The guilt twisted inside me, a sharp ache in my gut, but there was something more powerful, more primal, taking hold. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. The tension between us was suffocating, but it also felt like something I needed to breathe. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering myself, trying to silence the storm inside me. When I looked back at him, I could see the vulnerability in his eyes. He was scared too, I realized. He wasn't just a stranger I'd met on a rainy night. He was someone who saw me. Really saw me. And that terrified me more than anything. "I don't know what to do with this," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "But I don't think I can stop seeing you." Noah's face softened, a quiet understanding passing between us. "Then don't. Don't stop. Let's figure it out together." I did not know, but I followed him to his place again. The door closed softly behind us, locking us into a space that suddenly felt private and infinite. The atmosphere buzzed with unspoken tension, each inhale laden with the gravity of the moment. A dim bedside lamp bathed the room in amber hues, its light weaving shadows across the walls that swayed in sync with my pounding pulse. The energy between us crackled, a force that had simmered for ages, now undeniable. Our actions were swift yet deliberate, fueled by a blend of thrill and apprehension. I gripped the edge of my shirt, hands unsteady, and as I lifted it off, our skin grazed. The brief contact surged through me, sharp and electrifying, stealing my breath. He moved nearer, his gaze fixed on mine, mirroring the blend of longing and uncertainty I felt. In his eyes lingered a silent vow, a pact of raw honesty that tightened my chest. Clothes slipped away gradually, each discarded layer stripping us of pretense. The room seemed to contract, the distance between us dissolving. His fingertips glided along my collarbone, tender yet tentative, as though I were fragile. But fragility wasn't what I craved. I wanted the fervor that had brewed between us, unrestrained. The kiss, when it came, halted time. His mouth was warm and persistent, skin searing where it met mine as he drew me in. His hands charted my body with intent, as if etching every contour to memory. I surrendered to the current, my palms skimming his back, feeling sinew shift beneath them. There was no hurry, only immersion, a collision of discovery that felt ancient and startlingly new. As we joined, it was like pieces fitting seamlessly together. A gasp escaped me, pleasure rippling through my veins, yet it transcended sensation. Emotion swirled in his embrace, in his staggered breaths, in the unbroken hold of his stare. We communicated without words, a silent dialect of yearning and surrender that left me dizzy. Our sync was instinctive, each caress and murmur binding us tighter. Never had I felt so unveiled, yet fear had no place here, only the security of being wholly known. He grounded me, I anchored him. The outside world ceased to exist. Afterward, we lay entwined, limbs loose, hearts still drumming. His arm curled around me, fingertips brushing lazy circles on my hip. A tranquil stillness settled, a serenity I hadn't known I longed for. When our eyes met, his smile was tender, gaze brimming with an emotion too vast for words but echoing in my soul. No words broke the hush, none were needed. The quiet hummed with the certainty that something had shifted irreversibly. The future was uncertain, but in that breath, it didn't matter. All that existed was his warmth, the cadence of his breath, and the quiet truth that this was no illusion. Drifting in the hazy aftermath, eyes heavy, I sensed this was merely the first chapter.